Welcome Northeast Conference fans to our latest NEC Now podcast on the NEC Overtime Pod. Today I am joined by Sacred Heart fencer and president of Pioneer Vote, Carlos Ruiz. As part of the Northeast Conference's educational initiative focusing on voter registration, NEC Votes, we will be discussing the importance of voter registration and civic engagement on our campuses. Carlos, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me so much.
I'd like to first start just by talking about what led you to Sacred Heart to continue your athletic and academic careers. Why did you choose SHU?
So I originally came in as a freshman on the Division I cheerleading team here at Sacred Heart. I'm from Norwalk, Connecticut, so not too far away from here. So I knew a little bit about the school and I wanted to continue my passion for sports. And then it wasn't until my junior year I actually picked up fencing. So now I'm a member of the fencing team here at Sacred Heart. I've learned a lot. I've been able to meet so many amazing teammates that have helped me along the way. And I'm super excited for my senior season, even though it's totally up in the air, but I'm very excited just to be able to just have that opportunity. And just for the academic part, Sacred Heart was very well with its business program, and it's led me to a lot of opportunities, like picking up a new sport, as well as just other campus involvement.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I'm sure it was difficult transitioning from one sport to another. That's really impressive. Good for you. And it's great to hear that, you've kind of found the right academic fit as well. Okay, so I'd like to kind of discuss what happened in Bridgeport last November. You reported experiencing borderline voter suppression, and I'm going to stop there and just kind of let you share your experience with that.
Pioneer Vote actually started last May of 2019, so the end of my sophomore year. And basically the initiative was, again, similar to NEC Votes, is just to get students registered to vote, as well as the importance of teaching students why it's so important to vote in local and state elections. And of course, the presidential election is super important, but change is very much possible in our own backyard. So a lot of students, there's always been some sort of negative relationship when it comes to how students are perceived sometimes. And so some of the ideologies or some of the things that were said to the students that day was, you shouldn't be allowed to vote here. You don't deserve to vote here. You're not from here. And so it did cause a little bit of an uncomfortable state for some of the students that were coming in, especially since most of us, especially in my grade at the time, this could have been our very first election. I know it was for me, that last election. And so especially for a lot of students that it could have also been their very first time, it was a little bit of a hit, but fortunately enough, with the support that we had with the students, and continuously being respectful and just taking it all in, we were still able to make a great effort at the polls.
It is unfortunate that, a lot of you would have had that kind of uncomfortable first experience. And I'm sure that rhetoric, it was super damaging for some students that might have kind of discouraged them from going out to vote again. I hadn't really thought about that when I first heard about this story. So thank you for sharing that. But we'll kind of like to talk a little bit more about what Pioneer Vote is. I know it's a student-led campus-wide campaign, but like you mentioned before, your mission is kind of to spread awareness and encourage others to get out and vote and register to vote. Can you speak a little bit just more about what exactly you're doing right now?
So right now, since its founding, it is now transitioned over to be a club. So it is now a club under our student government or student life, student and activities here at Sacred Heart. And so now we're able to have more members a part of our team. So last year it started off with just me and another student. And then in October, we added in another student to our team, but now we have expanded into having an executive board, which will just have other student leaders that also have the same mission and goal, which is to educate students on voting, and as well as opening up to other students at Sacred Heart. One of the things that we are working on, one of the plus being the president of Pioneer Vote, but also being a student athlete here at Sacred Heart, which was something that is super exciting, was one, NEC has its own initiative, but also members on SAC also wanted or have expressed their interest. And even last year, student athletes were one of the first groups to really get registered to vote. So that's something that we're working with right now, is just building that partnership again just ensuring that students are getting registered to vote and also learning. Last week, actually, so literally last week, we had a Constitution Day event, which was virtual, of course, though we were able to speak about the future of the election. So it was me, as well as the presidents of the College Democrats and College Republicans. We were able to speak about that. Again, just educating all students about the importance of voting, as well as just other, registration drives right now, which is just, again, whether last year we did actual registration cards, which were designed by us by the Registrar's Office of Fairfield, which were also equally accessible to Bridgeport as well. Though this year we are taking a little bit of a turn with online since it is a little bit easier.
Yeah, so I'm assuming you're one of the founders of Pioneer Vote in addition to just being the president. So why were you, last year wasn't a presidential election year. Why were you so interested in kind of informing students about voting and becoming involved in such a hands-on way?
I believe as young people, we have always been kind of suppressed, we saw that right there when we were going out to vote. But not only that is that as students or as younger people, we are never really counted in the election just because the idea behind voting is it's something that older people do, and it's not something that is really taught in our, like, at least for me in my own experience, in my own family, it was never really a big thing to go out to vote. But now that, as we're seeing with what's going on, it's super important. We all have our own opinions. And at the end of the day, the only great change that can happen is, other than posting stuff on your social media, is going out to vote. So that was something that I believed in, as well as the other two students that worked on this with me from its beginning. It was just simply educating students about why voting is so important.
Yeah, that's great. And it's really awesome to see that you had that desire and that drive and you went out and you made it happen and are continuing to make an impact on your campus today. It's really great. And like you mentioned, in 2 questions ago, that Pioneer Vote is working with SAC, the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, to promote student registration and assist in voting itself. Now, one of the SAC co-presidents, Kylie Harvey, wasn't unfortunately able to be on today, but she did explain that you're doing a few different things together regarding registration, which includes faculty guest speakers, shuttles, and tabling outside the center and providing registration cards. Can you speak about why these types of actions are important and what made you choose to do these specific things?
So this was something that we did last year before everything, but this was one of the ways that we did believe in with shuttling. Sometimes it's very hard, even though our polling location, actually the main goal was to actually get a polling location on our campus, though unfortunately that is a lot of work for both cities, or both towns that we're in. Since we are in Fairfield, they would just have to reroute everything in all their districts. And since we do have students that live on the Bridgeport side, they would also have to do a lot of other switching around, and especially now with the pandemic going on, it definitely wouldn't have been it would have been a little bit tricky, just because we would also be having, if they had to switch the polling location, they would also have to put in other people would be able to go to that. So we had shuttles to provide transportation for our students that ran all day for students to be able to go. And because sometimes in the life of a student and sometimes in the life of a student athlete, it can be very hard balancing class and going, making sure you have something to eat, going to practice, and so on and so forth with other involvements. So we believed in with the shuttles to do so. Other means, education is super important. So the advisor for the club is actually Dr. Gary Rose. He's one of the faculties that we're looking into having to talk about us, just because he's so knowledgeable about this subject. And even last year, overall, the student body has, both College Republicans and College Democrats, have a great relationship with other local councilmen as well as other state reps here. So we've also had them included in the conversation last year with the importance of voting.
Yeah, that's great to hear, because in working to develop all the resources for NEC votes, I kind of learned that 3 of the top barriers to voting are lack of just education on not even just candidates, but how to vote, lack of transportation to polling sites, and trouble like with your schedule. So it's great to see. I know the NCAA is doing it now, but the NEC a few months ago announced that actual November 3rd would be a day off from all athletic related activities. So it's great to see that you're also kind of confronting those major barriers to voting and making it easier and more possible for so many people to vote.
Yes, I'm actually super excited about the November 3rd day. It was something that it should be a holiday. It should be a day that we have with importance, just being able to vote. And again, something that we always hit is it doesn't really matter who you vote for, as long as you're educating yourself and are getting registered. That's really the first step into ensuring change for whatever side it may be for you. But again, it's something that's super important.
Yeah, for sure. And in addition, to yourself being an athlete, why did you think it was so important for Pioneer Vote to collaborate with SAC?
So again, this was actually something that SAC brought to me, brought to Pioneer Vote. I was actually reached out for that. And for me, I was very honored, very exciting that we were able to do a good job last year. Like last year, we were able to register over 1,000 students. And we had about 600 students actually go out to the polls. So there was a lot of success, and especially with last year's election, there was a lot of talk about certain ordinances that really would have taken a hard hit on students. So just that alone really motivated a lot of students to register. And I think now, since we do have an outlet, since Pioneer Vote is here on our campus, it was just another outlet for students to be able to reach out and to be able to know that there's an organization here on campus that is solely focused on voting, the importance of education and voting registration.
That's amazing, that number, that 1,000 students registered and 600 out to the votes, especially in a non-presidential election. And it would be so amazing to see, maybe in a non-COVID year, if other schools follow the sort of things you did and see how many students we could actually get registered to vote and actually voting. That's really, really incredible.
Yes, I was excited. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what is a common misconception or kind of area of information about the voting process that you wish to correct or kind of provide more information about, that you think, maybe students or just the general voting population doesn't really understand well?
I think it's super important to really understand why voting is important and what it holds for not only yourself, but the other people, your teammates and everybody else that's around you. I think the misconception with voting is that it necessarily doesn't have a change, or sometimes my vote doesn't make a difference. And that was something that with planning Pioneer Vote, me and the other two students, I'll just name them, Meredith Kennedy and Alessandra Leone, because they did a great job with this. And they've also are continuing in with Pioneer Vote. We discussed that a lot, the different excuses that people have, and that was one of them. It was, my vote doesn't make a difference where I live. It doesn't have an impact. Why should I vote? And it's not like I don't have an opinion. And these are all misconceptions. We all have opinions. Some maybe are not as well liked or well received as others, but we have that. And our vote does make a difference. And again, it just goes back to, we're very fortunate enough to be able to vote, since some people around the world don't have that right.
Yeah, that's a super common misconception, one I've heard a lot in my own personal life. And then when I was doing research for NEC votes, I saw a few examples, mostly in local elections, that came down to 1 to 2 votes. So it's crazy how much every vote really does matter. And I know you kind of touched upon this in your answer, but by way of wrap up, in your own opinion, in your own words, why does voting matter?
Voting matters, and I've been asked this so much in the past few, weeks. Voting matters so much because it's your way of voicing your opinion. We all have opinions. We all have things that we want to see change, and the only way to really make a lasting impact, whether short or small or big, small, however, voting really can make the biggest difference, and can sometimes even lead to bigger change that sometimes can be necessary.
Yeah, awesome. That's really great. And it's been great to hear your perspective. And thank you so much for taking the time. You're doing really great things on your campus. It's really, really awesome. And I'm, glad that there are people out there trying to do things like this. It's awesome. But yeah, so thank you so much for taking the time. Pioneer Vote can be found on Instagram and Twitter by searching at Pioneer Vote. They have a lot of great educational information regarding voting, as well as common myths associated with the democratic process that you should definitely check out. For more on voter registration, follow at NEC Sports on Instagram and Twitter, where we will be sharing educational, nonpartisan information every Tuesday leading up to the November 3rd general election. That was Carlos Ruiz, and this has been NEC Now.